back of leg exercises and a little bit of stretch. So, 4-point kneeling. You ideally want the knees under the hips and hands under the shoulders, or if your wrists get a bit tight sore, it's quite a nice adaptation of this exercise because it changes the angle a little bit into favour of the hamstring. So bringing the elbows a little bit forward so you've got a bit more space in the hip joint, so it's not so hard to lift the knees up, or upright if you're in the 4-point position. And so it's a donkey leg kick, and all we're going to do is we're going to just kind of emphasise the back of the leg by flexing the ankle. Just take the right knee back a little bit, and then start to pull the sole of the foot up towards the ceiling and maybe a little bit further, and then bringing the knee back down just to tap the foot. Now the way up is kind of power from the back of the leg. The way down is using in the back of the leg again, so don't just kind of drop, just resist and use this as an eccentric loaded exercise. Do about 6 to 8 on either side down. When you're in this position, it's very hard for your waist to kind of lose its structure. But if you're in the hands and knees position, your body might start to move a little bit more. So think long stiff lines, lifted back of the shoulder, back of the neck, reach through the crown of the head. Just again, take the knee back a few degrees, and then just kind of with the ankle flexed, or dorsal flexed, you're going to press up. You won't go as high, but you've got to kind of pull up from here as you pull up from here. And if you feel your body dropping, your head dropping, that's not working hamstrings, that's just really not going to work. So be really safe, be sound. Smaller with control is better than bigger with wildness. Okay, and then we can do a similar kind of movement in a relaxation position, but first of all we want to try and relax the front line of the legs into the hip flexors, into the front of the hips, so the leg bones can sink deeper into the hip socket. So it's just a case of bringing the outer border or the chop side of the hand into the fold where the leg joins the hip socket. Fingertips on the pubic bone. Let gravity press you into the floor evenly. Now if you're fighting it here, you're probably pitching your spine up or down. So try and let the weight of gravity be even across the whole of the front of the body. So it's almost as though the floor forms underneath you. And then breathing in all the way down to your fingertips. As you breathe out, let the heels of the hands, or the outside border of the hands, sink a little bit into the front of the hip joint, and try and get the front of the thigh, the ligaments, tissues, whatever you want to call it, into the front of the hip. Just let that go with the out breath. And then try and funnel the breath into the narrow parts of the hip, rather than into here. Rather than activating all this as you switch, as you breathe in, think about just kind of tautening up to the pubic bone, kind of connecting all through here, all through here. And if you do this a few breaths, you'll start to feel a little bit more action, activity, or kind of awakening of the back line of the legs, bottom hamstrings. And it's just as the leg bones sink down, as this all goes quieter, these will become more prevalent, not necessarily doing any harder work. We're just going to feel them a little bit more. And then once you kind of establish that softness, that sense of ease, that sense of balance, that sense of even, just take the weight almost off your feet and try and pull the weight of the leg bones into the back of the hip, so it kind of sinks down even more, gets heavier, gets more connected, gets more kind of gravity into that part of the body. Again, maybe 6 to 10 breaths, and try and remember it's that sleeping baby breath, not anything else. So then we're going to do a bridge with long legs. So I want you to lengthen the legs away, and I want you to sort of think about how your hamstrings are more necessary with the feet away, and they're less necessary with the feet in. So this becomes more quaddy, more bottom, yeah? So take them away just enough so that they feel like they're energized and active. Get that kind of awakening through those lines. stand into the feet. That's going to help create the lift, but also use the little toe side of the foot and the big toe side of the foot to adjust the inner thigh, outer thigh connection so you've got balance. Hands active, press down with the feet, lift the bottom up into the air, and as you lift the hip, just go as high as you easily can until you feel some work in the midline, the belly of the hamstrings. And then as you breathe out, lower straight back down. So we're keeping the body really stiff, we're keeping that kind of cylinder of connection around the waist and the hips and the rib cage, and using just the back of the legs as the main driving force to lift the body up into the air. Breathing in and then breathing out to lower down. So that's a few exercises to do strengthening, and then just because we want to get fresh blood, oxygen, sugars, salts, whatever, back into the muscles that have just been working, we'll do plyometry prep, and we're going to be working on the neutral spine, so it's a tiny hollow under the small of the back, heavy through the hip, heavy through the rib cage, nice and even, nice and straight, and then just use the fingertips to support the leg from tipping inside or outside. And then with the toes in plantar flexion, but not too active, just a little bit. Press the toes to the ceiling as you breathe in. And then as you breathe out, let the heel relax, let the knee bend and just drop it down. Now, focus on a point on the ceiling or the roof where you're reaching your toe to. Every time you do this and go to a straight leg, when you release back down, this switches on, switches off the electrics in the leg muscles. And you might find that the leg goes a little bit further, a little bit different. And the final watch point would be just to try and get the leg itself to not roll in, which is kind of closing the hip joint, energizing all this front line, and not really stretching into the back of the hip. Rather keep the knee tracking over the hip joint, but actually let the lower leg spiral in so the heel just kind of fraction turns in, and the big toe is then in line with the shin, knee, hip. Yeah, so it's kind of that line, and that will give you a better straight leg position because it allows the knee to actually articulate on its condyles and really go into its screw home lock, cool position. So I hope that makes sense. Have a good one. Always be safe when you're moving, breathe well, and don't do anything that hurts.